Hey everyone, welcome to the CyberHub Engage podcast. We have a very special episode for you today. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back with more about this episode. The CyberHub Engage podcast is sponsored by CyberHub Academy. Now, people have been asking me, what is CyberHub Academy? Well, just for the sake of full disclosure, before I get into it, I am a part of CyberHub Academy. My partners there have supported my vision for CyberHub Engage in return for their sponsorship. But they are cyber business operation experts. And that means that they help any size business operationalize cybersecurity, whether it be identifying threats, solving issues and problems, developing incident response plans, practicing incident response through tabletop exercises, and identifying different methods to maximize and really bring value out of your cybersecurity budget. We all know that cybersecurity budgets are tight, and it typically doesn't start raining money until something happens. Well, these are the guys to help you make sure that if, God forbid, something does happen, you would have all your T's crossed and your I's dotted. Make sure to support them and check them out, cyberhubacademy.com. And we're back. So I told you guys we have a really, really special episode, and we do, because I am with one of the greatest cyber minds in the state of Georgia, really the leading master of it all. Gave an awesome presentation last week on how to hack a car.
Thanks,
and he has me kind of excited about today. Dr. Bryson Payne, who's the director of Center for Cyber Operations Education here at the University of North Georgia in the beautiful mountains of Georgia in Dahlonega.
Thank you for coming up, James. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, man. The campus is so beautiful here.
It is a beautiful place to live and work, I do have
It
to
is.
say.
It's so nice and calm, and it doesn't have any of the honking. It reminds me of like CU Boulder before Colorado.
Right.
What was it as today? Like 20 years ago when I was in high school, and I was right outside of CU, and I used to work in Boulder.
Oh, wow.
And you'd go walk to campus, and it was so quiet and peaceful. And I'm just hoping.
It's hard to believe that Atlanta is just an hour away.
Yeah, I don't want to look that way. Kind of want to stay where I'm at right here. I'm very peaceful, and this is like Georgia wine country too, right?
It
like
is. We've got
Dahlonega.
a number of vineyards within a very short drive of campus. It's just a great place to live and work all around.
So if you want to visit Dahlonega, come out, have some wine, check out
Absolutely.
UNG.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of really cool stuff happening here, and so. I've known Dr. Payne for about 2 years now, really, but we've never really gotten into the meat and potatoes of what he does at UNG until a few weeks ago. If you recall, for some of our subscribers and listeners, we were at the Cyber 2.0 Hacker Challenge last week at the GTRI campus at Georgia Tech in Midtown Atlanta, and there was a $100,000 prize for people trying to hack their system.
Absolutely. 58 hackers came and did their best to try to take down Cyber 2.0's defenses, and it was like firing Nerf darts at a castle wall. That is a really impressive system. So our students were both impressed and depressed after a couple of hours of trying every attack they knew and coming up empty. But it was a great experience.
They had 58 students, hackers, over 2 million attacks withstood.
In 6 hours.
In 6 hours. And in Israel, they did it for like 12 hours with
300
times
hackers.
with 300 hackers.
And only had a million attacks.
Only had a
our
million
students
attacks.
Were throwing it in there. We had students from Kennesaw State and Georgia Tech as well, and then a few corporate and military hackers in there.
Yeah, it was an awesome event. It really highlighted kind of the progress of cybersecurity. And the different like hackathons that go on. I mean, typically, you have these bounty programs, the bug bounty programs and whatnot. But this was different for a lot of different reasons.
Oh, yeah. $100,000 grand prize shows that Cyber 2.0 is pretty confident of their system.
I know. I really wanted that money. I don't know if
I
you
had
were...
some students who were thinking maybe that would be the scholarship all the way through a doctorate. But I did warn them that it was some pretty advanced mathematical chaos theory-based programming, and it lived up to its name, yeah.
One of the fascinating things about it is, and we're going to get into your background and everything here in
Sure.
just a second, but and our listeners will find out more. But you gave a great presentation about hacking essentially hacking smart cars. I mean, you haven't been able to hack a Tesla yet because no one will let you.
We have one actually parked right out here, but in the Model 3, you don't get the same access to that CAN bus, that controller area network that you have through most cars through the onboard diagnostic port. So, nobody's been willing to let us strip the wires under the dash in their Tesla yet.
I wonder if we should do a crowdfunding campaign to buy a Tesla.
That would be wonderful. We would gladly take that at the UNG Foundation.
Right? We should do that. We should do a crowdfunding campaign to
that
buy
would
a
be
Tesla so that we can try to hack it.
You got it.
What a great campaign. We should do that.
You got it.
We should do that. I am writing this down.
I'll pair you up with our foundation person. She would love it.
Because I think we should do like a crowdfunding, and we'll see if Elon Musk will donate that if we get enough traction.
We would take it.
Maybe Elon. Well, what we need to do is get Elon Musk on the Joe Rogan podcast again. Get Joe Rogan to get him stoned, and then come to him with this
Invite
idea.
him over.
Yeah. Hey, Elon. You know Mars and the moon? We want to try and hack a Tesla. Model 3, man. It's a $40,000 car. Come on.
Yeah. And I think you can afford it these days. They're doing pretty well.
Yeah, they're not doing too bad.
I am a registered Tesla security researcher, so I've actually signed up through the program. So if we do fry the firmware in a Tesla, Tesla will guarantee it. They'll reflash the firmware for free. But if we completely incapacitate a car, we just have to pay for the tow truck to get it down to the Alpharetta Service Center.
Which is a really good service center to go to. I mean, it's in Avalon.
Nice.
It's a pretty nice spot.
It's a good place to have nearby.
Yeah, I mean, go grab some food and hang out while they kind of fix it. But how did you get started in cyber? I mean, how'd you end up at UNG, of all places?
Well, UNG was actually one of the schools that I went to for my undergraduate degree.
Okay.
I went to Young Harris College and got an associate's degree up in the mountains. I went to Georgia Tech for a couple of years, and then I got a really good job with the company doing database administration. And I thought, I don't need this 4-year degree. I'm going to go out and just make some good money in IT. After about 3 years as a database admin, I realized I needed that 4-year degree. So I came back to North Georgia. It was close by. I was working not too far away, and decided to complete my degree at UNG, got my bachelor's here, went on for a master's, and I actually taught middle school math for 1 year. I've always wanted to teach, and so I thought, if I could make a difference in middle school for even one kid, and maybe I did in that 1 year.
What grade were you teaching?
I taught 6th, 7th, and 8th grade math.
What year was that?
That was 1997 and 8.
Okay, so they were a bit more polite than today's generation. Because I think if you went to a 6th, 7th, or 8th grade today, you would probably... our gray hairs would be grayer.
I was still so tired every Friday afternoon. I came home and passed out face down in my couch, and then would wake up 4 or 5 hours later and go out and hang out with friends. But that's a tough job. I really respect K-12 teachers the whole way through. They do amazing work.
And they're underpaid?
I would say that's a pretty
They're
fair
underfunded?
statement. Yeah. But that's one of the reasons we reach out to K-12 schools and do so much to help high schools in the area, because we really want to give kids in this region the same opportunities as students in any part of the world. So we'll talk about that a little bit.
Yes,
I don't want to jump too far ahead. But I got an offer from the department head of mathematics and computer science back in 1998 to work on my master's here at UNG as a graduate teaching assistant. And so I came back to UNG while I was doing my doctorate at Georgia State, and I taught here the whole time. I was working on my PhD in computer science at Georgia State, and when I graduated, I was just very fortunate they had a tenure track position, and I got to come back, and I've spent, out of 21 years, I've been here for 19.
Wow. 19 years ago, cybersecurity wasn't even known by that name.
Oh, absolutely. We had information assurance back in those days.
It was information assurance. It had zero appeal.
And zero funding. Yeah, it was pretty close.
And it had no interest to anyone.
Right. And in 2004, one of my colleagues here at the university, Ahmad Ghaffarian, he saw the need for cyber moving forward and set up an information assurance and security concentration here at UNG way back in 2004 when things were still just getting started. We had some good colleagues at Kennesaw State that helped us get the program laid out and in our catalog. And ever since then, we've been graduating leaders in cyber. And nowadays, we actually call them cyber professionals instead of information assurance and security professionals.
Well, it's so funny because the terms change, but I think now there's as the market kind of expanded, the term cybersecurity now refers to, I think you could say, internet security. And information security is referred to data security, and network security is now network security. And those three are pretty defined now.
Absolutely.
And some colleges actually have 3 separate tracks for them.
Oh, sure.
So they've got like the cybersecurity track, which is all about cyber.
Right.
Information security, which is all about data and data governance and you know, peeling the onion and understanding the onion.
Sure.
And network security, which is, you know, what I like to call modern day IT.
Right. Yeah, in fact, in cyber alone, we can take one of 7 different big career tracks under the NICE framework, the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education. And we train across about 5 of those here at UNG. We try to focus on ethical hacking, that systems penetration testing, the protect and defend. We look at computer forensics. We have network security, the management of information security, and then we've got reverse engineering. That was part of our 3rd place win nationwide in the NSA Codebreaker Challenge this past year.
So when you look at reverse engineering, so there's a really cool aspect to reverse engineering that I think if you're not in cyber, you don't quite comprehend what it takes to be in reverse engineering, how cool it is to take a tool that a hacker develops and reverse engineer it so that it attacks the hacker and not you.
Exactly. Well, it takes a wide array of skills all put together. So you have to understand some of the basics of architecture, how the computer is built,
right?
Because things like the hardware registers matter when you're reverse engineering a piece of software. So we take something that either a hacker developed or something that was developed for a completely different purpose, and we turn it around. So if it's a piece of malware that somebody sent us, like ransomware that locks down your computer or that locked down the city of Atlanta just a few months back,
right?
Our goal is to reverse that, figure out how we can defeat it on our one machine, hopefully defeat it across the entire network and get all the files back. And then in the case of the NSA Codebreaker Challenge, they even had to reverse engineer the hacker's implementation of some blockchain transactions to pay the ransom. So in this fictional scenario for the NSA Codebreaker Challenge this past year, there were 3 machines out of a government network of 12 that had been compromised that actually paid the ransom, about a $20,000 Ethereum coin ransom. And the students had to successfully not only work with the blockchain and understand cryptocurrency enough to be able to read from a blockchain ledger of transactions.
And modify a wallet.
They actually had to go back and reverse some of those transactions and get the people their money back.
So essentially going through what the Secret Service does maybe in a SWIFT fraud scenario, only on a crypto
That's right.
aspect of it. How successful were they doing that?
We only had 1 student who made it to the last 3 challenges.
Oh,
and
wow.
Those last 3 were among the toughest of the whole 6 years of the NSA Codebreaker's history. He hit a wall about 200 hours in on this competition. It was a 100-day competition. I think
daily
2 students, 100 days. It was open the entire time.
Okay.
So they were in there. One of the students spent 20 to 40 hours a week through most of the competition, just working on this outside of his classwork on reverse engineering, computer security. So it was pretty intensive. We had 69 students participate, and Georgia Tech, I think, had 2 students who made it all the way through the last challenge. So we were in really good company with Oregon State and Georgia Tech coming in 1st and 2nd, and it was great to see the University of North Georgia 3rd.
Your program here has a lot of different cybersecurity and information security kind of aspects to it. What can you tell us about the program development here and how UNG, who, if for the untrained eye would be a small regional university in Georgia,
Right.
be such a major player in cybersecurity on a national level?
Well, we're fortunate in a lot of ways. We have a lot of great corporate partnerships. So we get access to software that our students train on that's the same that trains people in the NSA or Defense Intelligence Agency. So we have access to a lot of great tools through those corporate partnerships. But one of the best things is that we place a lot of students in internships. So, in fact, if companies in the Atlanta area are looking for interns, we have 981 computer science and information systems students as of this semester.
Oh, wow.
And that includes our 120 or so that are studying the full cyber major. But out of those students, we send 40 to 50 a year into internships, and they're able to bring back what they've learned. They give us a really good debrief when they come back on the types of technologies they were using on the job, what things they saw that they hadn't been exposed to yet in their university education. And then we hear from our advisors on the Cyber Business Council as well, what kinds of things they're looking for in industry. We work with our government partners as well through the Department of Defense to hear what kinds of things our students need to know when they hit the ground.
How many students are in your cybersecurity program this year?
We have 120 taking the full cyber major, but we serve around 300 students a semester in the information security courses. Those can be cyber majors, cyber minors. We have a lot of people studying criminal justice who will take the cyber concentration. We also have people studying any of our 8 Department of Defense strategic languages. So you can take Russian, Korean, Arabic, Chinese, Farsi, Portuguese, French, and I always leave one out. But we have 8 Department of Defense strategic languages here at the University of North Georgia that students can study from native speakers in each of those languages.
What's the hiring rate of graduates that get out of here? Do you have that number by any chance?
It's very close to 100%. I wish I could give you the exact statistic. I'll tell you anecdotally, I know of one student who spent more than about a month looking for a job in the past year or two. And I was able to connect that student with a recruiter, and they found a job right away, a nice one in Chattanooga, not too far away. But our students typically, thanks to internships, thanks to some exposure to companies through tech, hiring fairs that we have on campus pretty often, they usually have a job before they walk out of here. We also send interns to work for the U.S. government,
Right.
for the Department of Defense, and other high-level positions. So our students do really well finding those positions right as they come out if they don't already have a job while they're a senior here.
That's fascinating because when you look at other majors in other universities and you see typically, come graduation time, the market is flooded with CVs and people looking for jobs. But in cyber, that's really not the case. I mean, the job shortage is one thing. The talent shortage is another one. But, I won't name a university, but you and I were at a conference a few years ago where a professor of a major university said it takes 18 months for a graduate from their program to become adept to be valuable to a company after he's hired finishing their degree.
Right.
And I think that has a when you think of students that leave here that go right away and feedback that I get from people in the industry is, UNG graduates ready to go pretty much, after the 1 month training period that, corporations typically put their people through, compared to others. That's your eyes are on, your ears are within the industry.
Right. Well, that's been a great benefit of having close ties with industry in Atlanta and throughout the Southeast. We really try to make our programs hands-on. We cover all the theory, but we then have the students apply it. So in my computer security class, we learn about confidentiality, integrity, and availability, but then they practice what they're learning with real ethical hacking exercises. So they penetrate into a Windows computer. They learn how to carry out a phishing attack. So they see how they can apply the things that they've learned, like you don't leave your password stored in a browser in a public setting, ever. But when you show them that it takes about 5 clicks to reveal every password that's been stored in a browser in a public setting, then they understand why. The why behind a lot of cybersecurity is the part that's left out
Right.
in corporate training and in universities. And we try to focus on that a good bit.
What skills are you hearing that the industry is looking for now in cybersecurity professionals?
The one constant that I keep hearing is students need more networking. So we include 2 separate courses, a basic networking course and an advanced network security class in our cyber program. But that's probably a good thing for everybody to know a little bit more about. And then a little bit of programming. Coding is not an everyday part of most cyber jobs, but it is a gateway into a lot of other fields of IT. And so coding in Python, some scripting, but beyond that, what I hear from employers that they like the most is the fact that our students have used Kali Linux and Metasploit, and they understand Nmap. Some of the real tools that they use, at least at an entry level in a lot of those jobs. They might get access to more advanced tools as they move up in their career, but by understanding those fundamentals and how cybersecurity actually works, it really serves them well as they move up.
So I'm going to touch on a subject, and I'm always against, kind of the bias, but facts are facts. Minorities are underrepresented in cybersecurity. They just
Absolutely.
are. We can argue the reasons, but they don't help our conversation at all. How do you see getting more minorities? How do we appeal to the different minorities? I mean, obviously, when you look at cybersecurity, and I have these percentages based on some research that was put out there, but the predominant people that go into cybersecurity are white or Asian Americans.
Right.
And Asian Americans covers, people from Asia, including India.
Sure.
And, African Americans and other, Hispanic minorities are really
They're severely underrepresented.
They're severely
in a lot of
underrepresented.
technology careers, but
Correct.
cyber specifically. Yeah.
And women as
Absolutely.
well. How do we bridge that gap? I mean, is it something that we need to start doing earlier, high school age? I mean,
Absolutely.
there's still so much. The work shortage is obviously there.
Right.
Number one, but if we're let's say we have an African American or a Hispanic listening to our podcast today, and he goes in his head, well, there's no way for me to get into cyber. I don't even know how to really use a computer. Do they really need to know how to use a computer to get into the cybersecurity
Not
field?
to get started. They need to be a good problem solver. So if they like taking things apart and putting them back together, ethical hacking is probably a good place for them to look. If they like solving mysteries or figuring things out, forensics might be a good thing for them to focus on. Anyone can get into cyber as long as they're interested and want to keep learning. We start working with high school students through two of our programs here at the university, and we give them a chance to just see, first of all, that cyber is fun, that they can actually apply it to their own lives when they understand why not to store a password, when they understand why they need to run their firewall and their antivirus on their personal computer. That makes a big impact, and they can protect their family, protect their friends. So we show them that it's fun, first of all, it applies to their lives, and second of all, that they can do it. We find that once you do those two things, the rest will take care of itself because they'll dig in and they'll keep learning more. And we found that that's the case working with high schoolers. I think it could start even earlier. We are hoping to have a middle school program within the next 2 years. So we take this same kind of education and make it more middle school friendly and get kids started earlier. What we do in our high school programs is we recruit 50% female, 50% male, and then we try to represent a good bit of ethnic diversity as well. So we get people of lots of different backgrounds working together.
It's fascinating when you look at how it lacks diversity, but also when you look at, for example, I saw a recent paper that was written by a university out of England that was talking about cybersecurity careers in Asia, where it was 97% males and 3% female, and that's in Asia. You think of Europe is I think it was like 92-8, and I don't know what the rest of them are, but I mean the statistics are just astounding. Do you feel like that's a stigma that we need to overcome, or is it just opportunities, or is it a mix of both?
Well, I think some of it does come just from the stereotype that IT is a more geeky field. It's usually male dominated. But the only way to change that is to get more women into the workforce.
Right.
And where we really need to start that is in middle school. By high school, some research has shown that as many as 90% of females have decided they don't want to go into a STEM career at all. We need to change that worldwide. But specifically here in the U.S., programs like the Gen Cyber program, we're very fortunate to get grants through from the NSA and NSF, are seeking to change that by, as I mentioned, we recruit 50% male, 50% female. So out of the 40 students who are in our Gen Cyber program, we'll have 20 males, 20 females. and they live on campus for 10 days doing ethical hacking and coding. Car hacking is a part of that program as well. And they even hack drones. So some really cool things they get a chance to do.
So we're going to get right back to hacking cars and hacking drones.
Okay.
But we're going to take a quick break for a message from our sponsor, and we'll be right back. The CyberHub Engage podcast is sponsored by CyberHub Academy. Now, people have been asking me, what is CyberHub Academy? Well, just for the sake of full disclosure, before I get into it, I am a part of CyberHub Academy. My partners there have supported my vision for CyberHub Engage in return for their sponsorship. But they are cyber business operation experts, and that means that they help any size business operationalize cybersecurity, whether it be identifying threats, solving issues and problems, developing incident response plans, practicing incident response through tabletop exercises, and identifying different methods to maximize and really bring value out of your cybersecurity budget. We all know that cybersecurity budgets are tight, and it typically doesn't start raining money until something happens. Well, these are the guys to help you make sure that if, God forbid, something does happen, you would have all your T's crossed and your I's dotted. Make sure to support them and check them out, cyberhubacademy.com. So kind of want to bring up a issue that we're starting to see become very, very popular. It's becoming a problem. It's disrupting nations. It's disrupting companies, and that's drones. Kind of, in London a few months back, a drone was able to breach kind of the 1 kilometer range around an airport and fly at an altitude that can threaten lives.
Right.
Is hacking drones or having the technology to disable a drone remotely, is that the right approach? Because no one really seems to have a solution to solve the drone issue other than making it illegal. I mean,
right.
Dubai had an issue. I think it was so Dubai International Airport, which is one of the busiest airports in the world. Sure. They run on 2 runways. There's nowhere for them to expand because of the vicinity of the airport.
Right.
I traveled a lot to Dubai. I know what it's like. I was when one of those runway gets shut down. In fact, a few years ago, in the August of 2015 or 2016, I don't know if you recall, a 777 crash landed and was on fire. No one died from it. It was coming from India and Emirates, but it shut down one runway, and so they had to delay all the flights because they only have 2 runways.
Right.
But you think of a drone just breaching, keeping those planes circling. A lot of Emirates flights are long distance, and so these planes are running on fumes at one point or another.
Mm-hmm.
Is hacking drones, is that the line of security you look for? Is that a problem? I mean, it's a problem we need to solve, right?
Sure. And individual responsibility, unfortunately, hasn't done the job yet. Here at UNG, we have dozens of drones across a number of departments. Our physics team, our computer science, even our psychology departments have drones. But we have all of our faculty that use the drones go through training from the FAA. They all have their certificates so that they know that they're only supposed to fly it up to 400 feet. We don't even go near 500 feet for our drones. We keep everything close to campus for the most part, but even on our drill field here in the center of campus, this beautiful drill field we have that frames the Dahlonega campus, we have helicopters land on a regular basis. So we need to know what kind of plans our faculty have for using the drones, just in case we have an Apache landing on the drill field for that day.
Does that happen a lot?
We do, actually, because of our work with the not just the National Guard, but the U.S. Army and the Ranger Camp. We are very fortunate to have helicopters land. It's great to take a picture with a big black helicopter right behind you. It's a lot of fun. So our students enjoy that. But we take drone flight very seriously for our faculty, for our students. We make sure that they've got training before they use them, even around our campus. You asked about hacking drones. I think for a lot of police departments, a lot of airports, the ability to use radio frequencies and disrupt a drone that's where it's not supposed to be is going to be one of the last lines of defense. It does need to be a last line, of course. We don't.
It doesn't need to be the first line.
Right.
But it should
personal responsibility should be the first line. But police, airports, public safety workers, they're going to need the ability to shut those devices down if they're flying, especially if they're endangering civilians.
Well, as someone who's, was trained to think like a bad guy would. I mean, you think of a drone, it's the cheapest way to cause most mass damage. I mean,
Absolutely.
if we go back to 9/11, terrorists used airplanes as a way to disrupt our country and launch an attack on our nation,
Right.
an attack that changed the way our nation handled things going forward.
Absolutely.
If you think of drones, so drones are a great advancement for a lot of businesses, for surveys. It has unbelievable benefits to the small to the large business. You're able to map things out at a fraction of the cost of what it used to cost to fly a Cessna or a Piper with all the photographers and all the equipment. Now you can put HD cameras on drones and sensors, and you can fly around and you can survey it. You can watch it in real life. You don't have to wait for the editing, for all these different things. And taking a drone with 5 pounds of explosives, flying it close to an airplane coming at landing, which is essentially, that's when it's at its softest targets at takeoff and landing. Because at cruising altitude, I mean, we've seen the Underwear bomber and a few others try to take a plane at cruising altitude, and they couldn't. Just the amount of explosives at 5, whatever it was that they were using at the time, wasn't enough to really cause the amount of damage they thought they could. And I think they didn't figure in cabin pressure and so many other things. And so, I mean, that had a part of it. But when you think of drones, you put 5 pounds of, explosives on drones, fly it close to an airplane coming to land, take it down. There's no way for the pilot to correct, or at takeoff, the plane isn't going fast enough to recover.
Well, that's one of the reasons we think it's important for our students to be exposed to drones. We use drones even in that high school program I was telling you about.
Oh, wow.
The students fly little mini drones. In fact, I've got one of them sitting right there.
Oh, very cool.
So they fly a little 8-ounce drone around an obstacle course in our gymnasium. So they get a chance to program the drone to fly through a hoop and then go to a different altitude, go through a different hoop, and then land in a box, further down the court. And even at the high school level, we want them to think of computing, think of cyber as bigger than laptops and desktops. We know about the Internet of Things, whether that's a drone, whether that's your automobile, whether it's the controls in your building. We want the students to be exposed to a wider variety of technology, but especially for our students who go into the military, those drones are really important.
Well, that's the future of our Air Force. I mean,
absolutely.
When you look at the Air Force strategy papers that have been written over the last decade or so, I mean, flying drones is cheaper, it's safer, and it allows us more maneuverability than having an airman fly a plane. Although let's not get it twisted. We still have the F-22s and F-35s, beautiful
pilots
machines.
Are still very important.
Pilots are still very important.
And we have pilots running a lot of those systems on the ground. But the unmanned aerial systems do offer a lot of protection, not just for our men and women, but men and women around the world.
Right. And it has a benefit, but the threat on travel alone by drones is crazy, and I hope that...
And just the disruption that they can cause in a city. I was in San Francisco not too long ago visiting my publisher, and a drone flew up over an overpass. We were maybe 75, 100 feet in the air, and a drone flew within 10 feet of the roof of our Uber that we were riding in. And as a person who takes responsible drone flying pretty seriously, it was a little unnerving to think that somebody's just flying right over the interstate there. Just a simple traffic accident can snarl traffic in the U.S. pretty easily.
I don't think people realize how much damage a drone does. When they think of like a 16-ounce drone or a 2-pound drone, right? They go, well, what's it going to do to a big commercial jetliner? And I go, people don't realize that. I mean, I think it was the Oklahoma Thunder, the basketball team, the NBA team, that their plane hit a drone midair, and the front end where the radar is for the airplane was bent in, and it looked like Superman gave it boxed it down. There's pictures of that all over online. It was a story that night, and then it kind of disappeared because they didn't really know the reason, but it was a drone impact. It was later put out that a drone was flying within range. The pilots obviously didn't see it as it was coming up, and the radars on the planes aren't sophisticated enough to recognize something as small as a drone.
But even whether it's a distraction or whether it's a material obstacle, if it actually gets in the way of the plane, whether it's an automobile or a plane, a drone can cause a lot of damage. So I think that you're right. To bring it back to hacking, I think we will have to have RF technologies, radio frequency technologies, as well as some advanced targeted hacking skills to shut down drones when they're places they shouldn't be.
So, really cool video that everyone can watch on YouTube. Micah, we should find it and post it on our page for this podcast. Is the Emiratis Air Force, shooting a drone with a weapon over Dubai airport. So they deployed a helicopter with a machine gun with I think it was an M50 or an M40 caliber rifle, and shred it to pieces over the airport.
Wow!
As it was flying over because it disrupted air travel, and they couldn't triangulate the signal from where it was being run, so they got rid of it. They shot it out the sky, and so that's really cool. Now, you gave a presentation about hacking cars. We kind of got into this whole hacking drones things,
right.
But hacking cars, the presentation you gave, I was absolutely fascinated by it. How easy is it to hack someone's car?
Thank goodness it's still pretty difficult. Not everything is run through the controller area network of your car.
Right.
There are lots of proprietary systems, and then every manufacturer handles those signals running across your car's network a little bit differently. So a hack that will work for a Toyota won't work for a Mazda usually. The same thing for even two different models from the same manufacturer may not handle those same signals the same way. So really, right now, the good news is that cars are still pretty secure from hacking. We do see a few big publicized events happen every now and then, like hacking the BMW i3, hacking a Tesla, those few isolated incidents. But really, a car hacker has to be very targeted right now because every automobile manufacturer and every make and model is slightly different, and that's just enough to make it harder to do something like you'd see in some of the Hollywood movies, Fast and Furious, for example.
Right, where they allegedly hack every car, exactly. Go after the Russian guy with the nuclear codes. Yeah.
There's still a little bit
in the middle of Times Square
there, right?
Yeah.
But if you're trying to target one particular vehicle, motivated hacker with some reverse engineering skills can figure out enough to see what is possible. And that's really where we start with our students. We have them look at the controller area network in a simulated car like we used in the presentation the other day. And all those tools are open source and free. Anybody who's already doing some ethical hacking can install the CAN utils, the controller area network utilities for a car, and try some basic car hacking right on a regular laptop computer. But then for about $20 to $75, you can buy the cable to actually plug into your car. I didn't start out as a car hacker. I started out as somebody who wanted to be able to work on their vehicle. But the average production car could have 50 or 60 chips in it, these electronic control units. So it's not like it used to be where you just learned how to change the oil, change the timing belt, work on the transmission. Now you need to understand a little bit about the chips that are really controlling most of the functions in your car. And so our students really enjoy that piece of it, figuring out how one car works, and then understanding some of the basics that apply to all automobiles. But the short version of the answer would be that it's still pretty tough to hack a lot of vehicles. But for one specific vehicle, you can usually find something that you can replay on that network.
Is the presentation you gave public?
Yes. In fact, if you go to brysonpayne.com, my website has the entire instructions for setting up a virtual car hacking lab.
Bryson Payne, BrysonPayne.com for that. And that's really cool. I mean, you believe me, you want to see how this is done, because I mean, I was flabbergasted at how easy it is and really how cheap it is to do it.
Absolutely.
And if you're,
well, whether you want to work on your own car or if you really want to test your car to see if it's got some vulnerabilities, the tools are accessible. Like I said, you pretty much have to redo it for every different vehicle, even the same same manufacturer for different
Just
models.
different models, yeah.
Right.
Because I mean, Tesla, the Model S and Model 3 are two very, very different cars. I mean,
Absolutely.
hardware, software wise, it's
That's right.
insane, but they're fun to drive.
Yep.
You guys kind of have a Masters of Science in Cybersecurity program that's launching next year.
That's right. It's in development right now. Still has to be approved by the Board of Regents.
What's the purpose of the program?
Well, we've got a Masters of Science in Computer Science
Uh-huh.
that has different specializations. So some of our initial specializations will be in data science. So if you're interested in big data, that's a really good program for you. Machine learning gives you a chance to get into get down to the lowest level of machine learning, so that you understand how machine learning data science works from the ground up. Then we have a cyber operations concentration that's built for people who want to do more than just ethical hacking, more than just cybersecurity or network security. They actually want to understand how to do things like reverse engineering, how to do advanced computer forensics, memory forensics, to figure out what happened inside a computer when attack does get through.
So that program's coming hopefully next summer?
We believe spring
fall?
of 2020 we'll have a soft opening, a soft launch, and then it should be a part of our catalog pending Board of Regents approval the next fall.
Very cool. So I have a few more questions, and we've got plenty of time, so we're good. So we kind of started talking earlier about, you know, the lack of diversity in cybersecurity. We talked about the lack of opportunity. But you spoke about the high school program.
Yes.
But at what age should parents really start introducing their kids to cybersecurity?
It needs to be younger than we're doing it right now. I'll say that. I actually started coding with my kids, and coding is just one small piece of all of IT and cyber. But when they were 2 and 4 years old, I wrote my first book called Teach Your Kids to Code.
Right, which is on your desk.
Yes, yeah. I wrote that with my 2 and 4 year old. I started collecting programs. They would just sit on my lap when I was grading assignments from my computer science courses. And they would always come up with ways to make the programs more exciting, more interesting. They'd say, "Daddy, could you make that red?" You know, I'd have the students draw something. And they would say, "Could you make that red? Could you make the background yellow?" And I'd say, "Well, you can do it. Just type R-E-D here." And so even before they could read and write, I mean, at 4 years old, my older son, who's now 10, by the way, he could type R-E-D on the keyboard, and when it turned red, and he saw that he could do that, I just saw a spark light up in him, and I thought, I bet other people would like to be able to do that with their kids. So I pitched it to a publisher, one of my favorite geek publishers, No Starch Press. They loved the idea, and it took about 2 years to develop the book, but in 2015, we came out with Teach Your Kids to Code. It's in 6 languages now.
What languages is it in?
I've got a copy there of the Chinese,
I see Chinese,
Korean, Russian, and Portuguese editions.
Great,
There's
all
also
of our
a Polish
frenemies
version out there. You can tell what parts of the world coding's important in. So,
well, I was in Russia,
yeah,
and I was fascinated. I was speaking to a 11-year-old kid. This was in 2011.
mm-hmm.
And he pulled out his computer, and he started showing me all these different codes he's writing, and he was writing an app in 2011.
Yeah.
This was before apps were what they are today.
Sure.
Right? This was before Wix and WordPress really took over the world. Right? I mean, it's just to me it's very frustrating as an American to watch politics stifle the progress of our education system and how we need to progress. Right? I mean, the fact is, if we educated our kids at cybersecurity, they'd go into the military service at 18 with the skills, not at 22,
Right.
after they've done the programs like the programs you guys have here and other universities across the country have.
Sure. Well, I think around the world we need to start earlier. Not just with coding, although I love coding. I've been programming for over 30 years, but with cybersecurity first, just for personal safety. Kids need to be aware of the threats that are around them on the internet. They need to understand social engineering. We talk about social engineering in business, like phishing, when somebody's trying to get your credentials. But for a 6-year-old, you can just explain to them that sometimes people want to hurt them, or they want to do things that are not in their best interest, and they'll just try to get them to go along with something small. They'll ask them, "Oh, would you help me with this?" And once you comply with one thing, Anybody
Builds
who's a
trust.
skilled con artist knows that you're more likely to do the next thing. And so we need to talk to our kids in easy to understand terms about the dangers online and in the real world.
So Atlanta hosted the Super Bowl a few weeks ago. For me, it was a methodical chess game. Some people will argue it was boring, but I enjoy when it's two teams that are evenly matched going at it, and it's not a high-scoring affair, but it's a defensive chess match, and it's just that one matchup, that one mistake. That's the difference between winning or losing. To me, that's no different than cybersecurity. That game seemed to me like a back-and-forth blue team, red team kind of scenario.
And that's the kind of exercise our graduates deal with every day. We make it sound as hard as it really is in cybersecurity by saying that the good guys have to be right all the time.
And the bad guys only have to be right once.
They just have to get in there that one time. You're right.
Well,
but it's more complex than that, of course. We've got people who are right almost all the time and still skate by. But the fight is real. The threats are really diverse. There are threats across the street and around the globe that we need to be protected from. Criminal hacking is just as dangerous for the average organization out there as an advanced, persistent threat from another nation. So people need to understand those threats, and I think we need to start in elementary school and middle school, just like we teach kids not to talk to strangers.
Stranger danger.
Exactly. Yeah. Stranger danger is just as real online. In fact, it's much worse online because that stranger could be, 300 milliseconds away, could be on the other side of the planet.
Well, he can be a 40-year-old man pretending to be a 13-year-old kid, speaking to a 12-year-old.
That's right.
And we saw that. I mean, one of the reasons I brought that Atlanta hosted the Super Bowl was because they used so many different cyber tools to capture sex traffickers and human traffickers in that week leading up to the Super Bowl that brings so much of that, I want to call it nasty part of society, into the open, into a mass event that's a male-dominated kind of scenario where taking advantage of the weak. I mean, they rescued, I think, what was it? They did a sex ring where they arrested, 40 some odd men that were in charge of trafficking humans, but they did it all online, by the way, which was fascinating. I mean, they didn't publish a lot of it, but I have friends that are in some of those places, and they were able to share with me some of those tools that were kind of used to track them down, and that all comes into cybersecurity. But when you look at the women that were exploited, the teenagers, they come from low income, bad neighborhoods, bad families, and they were all recruited online through social media.
Right.
With someone pretending to love them, to care for them, to offer them a bit of something they don't get at home, and luring them into a scenario where they're taken advantage of.
Absolutely.
I think what you talk about, which is teaching our kids from a young age, I think the debate now is no different than sexual education 20, 30, 40 years ago in schools, right? Is it the school's job to teach kids? And then if it does, what are they teaching? Because parents were like, no, we don't want to have the conversation, you do it. But then the parents wanted to control the conversation that the school had with their kids based on their own beliefs.
Right.
And it seems like with privacy today and the amount of crime that happens online, you were talking earlier about, kind of a cyber law enforcement career, the criminal justice aspect of it. Right. And when you think of police officers today, we think of them responding to a robbery. But you're seeing more and more crime happen through, the Nigerian prince scam is an ultimate cyber crime. It was the first phishing, and it still out
works, unfortunately. Yeah.
Because there are people that still believe it. Mm-hmm. Right? At the end of the day, you can have, I was the Electronic Crime Task Force of Atlanta. I give this example almost at every podcast I do when we talk about kind of education and phishing, but we were at a meeting where someone was presenting about their company that does these phishing tests. They're a good company. They have a great cybersecurity infrastructure. You can build the greatest technologies and things around your company, but guess what? It still takes one person to click on an email.
That's right.
To take it all apart.
Absolutely.
Right? Mm-hmm. And so the question is always like, well, how do you eliminate the human factor, the human element?
It's tough. Training is really important, but even a well-trained cybersecurity expert at the wrong time of day, 7 a.m., 5 p.m. when they're getting off work, they can click through the wrong thing sometimes. So it's not just about training. We need to have all those other security layers in place when the human element does fail. But people in cybersecurity really have a bad reputation for calling humans the weakest link. I think we can turn most people into our best front line of defense, because all of those attacks are coming at humans. If we train people from as young as kindergarten to spot social engineering, to spot when somebody's trying to con them or to get them to go along with something that's not in their best interest, I think we're going to see better outcomes generations down the road, years down the road in their business careers. They'll think twice before they click through that email, before they respond to that text message. We're seeing spam, phishing come through text messages, voicemails.
Wi-Fi.
We still get fax over Wi-Fi, absolutely. There was a case in the UK, I think just last week, that a secretary sent $250,000 in a CEO phishing fraud. Somebody pretended to be the CEO who was on vacation and asked her to transfer 198,000 pounds, I believe it was, and she did it because she was complying with what she thought was an order from her boss. And now the company is suing her for the damages that the bank wasn't able to cover. The only defense she had was that, well, the company didn't train me to spot phishing emails. So it's a really interesting case, and it's current, it's relevant. We actually just did some phishing training for the students in my computer security class last week.
How'd they do?
They did really well. In fact, they were trying to phish me. We taught them how to turn spear phishing around on Professor Payne. That was really nice. And they did some really impressive work.
Very cool. So we are up for right now. One last question, though. Just one last pitch for our general audience before we kind of go into the exclusive content for all the CyberHub Engage Patreon subscribers is, how do people connect with your program at UNG?
You can find us online at www.ung.edu/cyber. You can follow me. I'm at Bryson Payne on Twitter. I'm on Facebook, social media. We like to see students in our high school programs. You can find information about our summer program, the Gen Cyber Warrior Academy.
Right.
And you can connect with us right here in Dahlonega and on all 5 campuses of UNG.
So if you're a Patreon CyberHub Engage subscriber, stay tuned because we're going to be talking about a few more things here, including the FBI UNG cyber threat program that they've got going on, as well as some of the NSA DHS Center for Academic Excellence, some very exclusive content, as well as emerging technologies and how do we educate our kids on some of the emerging technologies that are rising up. We're going to get Dr. Payne's opinion on those and so much more. We'll be right back. So if you're not a Patreon subscriber, go now to our cyberhubengage.com, go to Patreon, subscribe and support our podcast, and you'll be able to watch the exclusive content that's available only to subscribers on Patreon. So thanks for listening and watching the CyberHub Engage podcast. We're going to be right back with exclusive content with the great Dr. Bryson Payne. The CyberHub Engage podcast is sponsored by CyberHub Academy. Now, people have been asking me, what is CyberHub Academy? Well, just for the sake of full disclosure, before I get into it, I am a part of CyberHub Academy. My partners there have supported my vision for CyberHub Engage in return for their sponsorship. But they are cyber business operation experts, and that means that they help any size business operationalize cybersecurity, whether it be identifying threats, solving issues and problems, developing incident response plans, practicing incident response through tabletop exercises, and identifying different methods to maximize and really bring value out of your cybersecurity budget. We all know that cybersecurity budgets are tight, and it typically doesn't start raining money until something happens. Well, these are the guys to help you make sure that if, God forbid, something does happen, you would have all your T's crossed and your I's dotted. Make sure to support them and check them out, cyberhubacademy.com.